Hello. Welcome. Welcome. I'm Annie Moyer. This is Sun and Moon Yoga Studio's YouTube channel, and we're going to meditate tonight, and I'll share some thoughts. So we'll begin seated. Getting comfortable is always the first step, recognizing where your body is meeting the ground and how there is length and space rising up from that meeting place to create an awareness of space inside and an awareness of location in your circumstance, in your environment. So setting ourselves in place and in time as we settle into the moment. And then begin to simply trace the breath as it arises and as it falls away. Notice when intrusions crop up, awareness of thoughts that are distracting or bothersome. Recognize their temporary nature and invite your mind back over and over and over again. We try not to get caught up the in the mythology that meditation is supposed to be an absolutely silent and thoughtless experience. Instead, we're simply making room to abide what comes in through the portal of the mind and see it clearly for just one speck of a vast space of consciousness, to be able to include it all. And then come back to a place of quiet. And so that meditative quiet is not a lack of thinking, but it's a lack of reacting to the thinking. And then bring some awareness to a deepening experience of the breath here as you begin to wake up, an awareness of your immediate surroundings and come back to a more awake and alert state to engage in a little bit of consideration of thoughts I'll share. So I made the mistake, which I usually do every day, same mistake of going on the Nextdoor app. And what happens is I get notifications in my email. And if you're not familiar with the Nextdoor app, it's sort of like akin to a community listserv. And there's lots of commentary on there. Some of it is useful, some of it is not, and some of it is at best annoying, and at worst really contentious and sometimes aggressive. I use it for does anybody want this lawn chair that we're giving away, right? That's where it comes in handy. But when we get these notifications in the email, and it usually includes the first half of the first sentence of somebody's post. And so it's sort of like, oh, if I'm interested in that, I'll click through and see what it says. So this morning, what piqued my interest immediately was the first half of the phrase. Somebody posted, "I love living in this neighborhood, but I wish people would." And I thought, you know what? I don't need to click any further, because whatever follows that statement is not going to be helpful. It's not going to be helpful to the person who's wishing for somebody else to be otherwise. And it's not going to be helpful for the person that they're wishing this otherness about, because they're not going to hear it without some sort of defensive posture, if they hear it at all. And so it's a recipe for failure to think that we will feel better if somebody else will change. It doesn't work that way. So, in fact, it's a pretty safe guarantee that we won't feel better and with a high likelihood of feeling worse. So the idea that I want to offer here is that instead of zeroing in on this behavior that somebody else is imposing and using that as a frame for if that would change, then I'll be okay. Rather, that we start to consider, that we consider considering what's underneath that behavior and respond to that instead. Because if we wish for somebody to behave in a certain way that we think is going to make us feel better, even if they do and we feel better temporarily, it's a Band-Aid. Whatever's underneath that person's behavior that's driving it, and whatever's underneath our desire to make it stop, is the actual source of discomfort for both. And that's where we should be putting our energy. So sometimes the causes of these behaviors are really innocuous and innocent and don't really carry much weight. But they range all the way from that to something that's driving a behavior that's really painful, that's really dark, that's really rooted in trauma or in pathology. But regardless of where it is on that continuum, our desire for that thing to change, it's not going to work because what's underlying it is going to be stronger, and especially strong if it's the causes that are born of suffering. So there's that piece of it. And another reason on the more innocuous side is that somebody's doing a behavior that it's just a result of their simple intention to enjoy life the way they see fit. Those are usually the smaller annoyances, but the more sensitive we are about it, the more they're bound to dig in if we're reacting to that, if we're posting on a community listserv. I love living in this neighborhood, but I wish people would. So I'll give you an example of the innocuous brand of this sort of thing. And that's and in fact, this was what this conversation today on Nextdoor was about, because I did click through. It was about the signs that people put in their yard asking dog walkers not to have their dogs pee on their grass, right? And I'm an admitted dog walker, a proud and loving dog walker. And I see those signs, and rather than getting defensive about it, like, well, where is my dog supposed to pee? I'm training myself to look underneath what's driving those postings of those signs. People just want to enjoy their yard. People just want to appreciate whatever they've planted there. And there is some evidence that dog urine can kill plants and certain kinds of grasses. So that's okay. What I can do instead of railing against the presence of these signs is I just cross the street. Just go somewhere else with the dog. It's okay. And so rather than saying, I would enjoy my dog walk more if these signs weren't posted all over the neighborhood, people are entitled to have the life that they're choosing if they're not hurting anybody else by doing it. And then at the same token, the person who's posting the sign or chooses not to post the sign but gets angry, I love living in this neighborhood, but I wish people wouldn't let their dogs pee on my grass. They have choices too. They can put the signs up and hope that people will respect them. They can also put up a fence. All kinds of choices that we have that recognize what's underneath the surface reactivity and to say, all right, there are solutions that I can control that will help me feel better about things and that doesn't then turn it out onto somebody else. Not all of our contentions are that innocuous, though, and some of them really are driven by deep pain and suffering. And it may be that whatever the behavior that we're objecting to is something that the other person is hiding behind to shield themselves from whatever pain it is that they can't face or aren't ready to deal with. And so for our part, if we suspect, and there usually is some underlying trauma that's driving this behavior, rather than wishing for that behavior to change, for that person to do better on the surface level, the way things are getting expressed out into the world, what would it feel like for us? And what would the experience be like for the other person, even if we never speak it out loud, to instead of wishing for the behavior to change, that we wish for them to find some clarity, that we wish for them to have some peace of mind, that we wish for them to have a safe environment where they can let down defenses. What if we simply wished for their pain to lessen and for their suffering to cease? That wish may be just that, a wish. It usually is. And it may never be expressed to the person, because if we do, again, that probably will come off as condescending. But that feels better for us. And it is an antidote to the reactivity, to the anger, to the little bubbles of hatred that start to come up from places that we don't even realize existed inside. It's called compassion. And it's work that has to start inwardly, that never starts with the statement, I love you, but I wish you would. It's us tapping into the unconditionality of being a caring fellow human, unconditioned by behaviors, unconditioned by pain and suffering, unconditioned by defensive postures. I want to offer a practice that comes from the teachings of Pema Chodron, one of the really wonderful resources that we have in contemporary Buddhist practice. And it's a practice that she calls 3 steps: precision, gentleness, and letting go. So the precision piece is to say, oh, there's me wanting this other person to change so that I can feel better, so that I can feel whatever it is, fill in the blank. Precision, seeing it clearly. Then the gentleness is making space for what might be underneath that behavior on the part of the other person, and making space for self-compassion to say, yeah, it's understandable that this bothers me. It's understandable that this is something that's difficult for me to deal with without being reactive. Making it gentle for both and all. And then the letting go is representative by an embodied exhale to say, this doesn't need to change in this moment. Now, one thing I just want to stipulate and make very clear here, We're not talking about outright harm and abuse. That's not something that we are supposed to be gentle about and just let go. That's a different category of misbehavior. So, precision, identifying the thing and seeing that it's not coming out in a vacuum. Gentleness, compassion for the person who's being driven, possibly unconsciously, into these behaviors, and compassion for ourselves to recognize that it's fair enough that we're bothered, and letting go. Softening with the exhale into the very simplicity of the moment. So let's take some time and just play with that a little bit. Settle yourself into a comfortable posture. Notice a few cycles of breath. And then perhaps recall the most recent annoyance where you found yourself wishing that somebody would just, whatever it is, fill in the blank. Maybe don't work with the most potent thing necessarily. And then notice with this attitude of precision what may be underneath. We don't need to make stories up about people. We can have safe guesses. Often that provides information right away as to whether there's something underneath that's worth attending to for ourselves or for others, and gives information about how we may skillfully respond. So precision, looking for clarity. And then having a gentle approach, a softness, compassion, and letting this compassion run on a two-way street for self and other. And then on your next exhale, what would it feel like to really let go? To have this be represented by the exhale and to watch it dissolve. Sometimes what may arise as an awareness through this contemplation of this nature is that some of the things we're reacting to are just not worth it. And so we make room, we're conserving resources for the things that are worth it, for the things that really do have an impact. Invite a next round of deepening breath and awakening to your immediate surroundings. And I just want to mention a third category of drivers of behaviors that we find problematic. So the first category was of the innocuous sort, people just wanting to enjoy their lives the way they see fit, simplifying the response to that without trying to change that. The second category was behaviors that are really born of real deep and true legitimate suffering, deeply rooted in our conditioning of our lives, and recognizing that that's an area that we don't have much control over in other people. And so finding compassion in that realm. And so the third one is what I'm going to call ignorance. And that can show up as truly harmful in words, thoughts, and actions. And this is where I'm looking from a social justice lens in terms of oppression and in reinforcing injustices and the marginalization of people. So what do we do about that? You know, that's not just something that we like, oh, I'm sorry you're so ignorant and racist, and but I'll just carry on. I'm not a fan of that brand of spirituality. I'm a fan of the more activist type, and so I think it's not enough to just say, well, I would really love living in this country if people were just not so racist. If people would only not be oppressive, then I'd be okay. It's more complicated than that. Clearly, it's a really tricky one because each one of us is so habituated in our beliefs and conditioned that the way things are the way things are. It's really difficult to let in somebody else's lived experience and let that be a counterpart truth to our own truth. And I'm speaking from the ignorance side as well as from the awakened side. This is where education has to happen in ways that recognize the otherness of people, to make room for the mystery and the history of why people are in the position that they're in. This is where, and it's not a cerebral type of education, but it's a personal type of education to let the humanity speak for itself. We have to be willing to share our truths in ways that are sincere and clear and respectful, not respectful of hate. I don't have any respect for that, but I have respect for ignorance. I have an understanding of how that arises. It's that metaphor of being a fish and not knowing what water is, because you never had to know, because it's what you were born into. And so on the part of the individuals who are perpetrating or perpetuating racist, bigoted behaviors and systems, that's the water they've swum in, swimmed. They have been used to swimming in. Come on, Tom, help me. Swum just sounded funny. It's their water. So we need to find ways to lower those levels so the head can come up above and see, oh, heck, that's what that was. That's the water. And this is the air. This is the sky. So we're not respecting somebody's oppressive views, but we're being respectful of the humanity that inevitably must lie underneath. Because I do not believe that we are born with hate in our hearts. I don't believe that we're born with ignorance in our hearts. I believe that we are conditioned by our culture, by our society. Scratch the surface and we're going to find that somebody is in pain or darkness, that there is knowledge and understanding that's lacking. And so how can we part those waters and make room to share truths, to say, this is why this hurts. This is why those behaviors, those patterns, those actions, those systems do not recognize the humanity of others. And to show that the humanity of others can be the place where we live harmoniously, if we can see this in each other. In terms of meditative practice that can awaken these possibilities for action, for truth-telling, for ignorance bashing, I am a huge believer in loving kindness practice. And this is where we express silently loving kindness as we hold the presence of others in our heart minds. And we start with the people that it's easy to love and to be kind to, the people who are in our lives that we enjoy, that we appreciate, that we treasure. And then we go on to the people that we don't know so well, the simple acquaintances, the ones we pass on the street, the ones who deliver our mail, the ones we pass at work or in school, the friends of friends of friends who we meet occasionally. And then we get to the sticky stuff. Then we get to the people who we see as problematic, the people who are perpetrating harms. And we express loving kindness for them too. As I record this today, it's the day after an election, and waking up yesterday morning with a practice of metta for all of the candidates, all of them, not just the ones I wanted to win, but all of them. May they know peace. May they be free from suffering. May they understand our fellow humanity. May they know the causes of ease. So I'll invite you to once again get comfortable, settle into your space, to your body, to your breath, and bring to mind somebody who is easy, somebody treasured, somebody beloved. And it can be a non-human other. It can be an animal. It can be a tree. Any life that helps to uphold your own life. May that life know ease. May that life know happiness. May it be free from suffering. May it know peace. And then conjure the humanity of somebody who is not well known to you, an acquaintance, a casual interaction. Maybe you don't even know their name. Friends of friends, distant relatives, ancestors even. Maybe may they know ease. May they know happiness. May they be free from suffering. May they know peace. And finally, bring to mind the person or the people who are on the other side of that sentence that says, I would be fine if only they would blank, blank, blank. The people who are difficult, the people who cause harm. The people who are contentious. The people who are sticky in our hearts and minds. This is a prayer that, a wish, an intention that stickiness gets smoothed. May they know ease. May they be free from suffering. May they know happiness. May they be at peace. And then we extend this aspiration for loving kindness to all beings. May all beings know happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be at peace. May it be so. Thank you.